Hello and welcome to the Florida Aviation Network's broadcast from the 51st Annual Expo and Sun and Fun. We're broadcasting live and in the clear from the Central Florida Aerospace Academy here at the Lakeland Linder International Airport in Lakeland, Florida. We're delighted that you joined us today. We have a number of interviews that we'll be doing with important guests and performers here at the air show, and so you're going to be impressed with the folks that we have and listen to what they have to say. And our whole opportunity here is to promote aviation safety. And so as we speak with each of the guests, you will hear them speak about their product or their service or what they're doing and how it relates to aviation safety. And one of those is with me here today, Larry Langebrake. And Larry, thank you for joining me today.
Ron, it's a real pleasure.
Good. And Larry is the co-founder of Say Weather. Say Weather. I'm sure that has a connotation for everyone listening, but Larry, why don't you tell us what it really means? What is Say Weather and what products does it give us as pilots and aviators?
Absolutely, Ron. So Say Weather is an advisory weather system that is primarily used at small municipal airports, private airports, where there is not an AWOS. So by our own calculations, 60 to 70% of general aviation is not served by automated weather. Say Weather fills that gap. We provide AWOS quality data, but in an advisory format. So basically, a weather station is installed at the airport. Our system communicates with that weather station and gets real-time information. Then the pilot can access that by keying their mic in the aircraft at 20 or 30 miles out and getting an advisory that sounds very much like an AWOS. Or they can access it by EFB, for instance, ForeFlight or others, and also by text. So the pilot has every opportunity to get current surface conditions at the airport they're approaching, especially for airports that don't have an AWOS.
So does the pilot need to say the words "Say Weather," or is there how do we activate that?
So it's activated by just keying the mic. So the key the mic, typically at most airports, it's 3 times or 4 times. And then what will come back is a full advisory that includes winds, direction and speed, gusts, temperature, dew point, altimeter setting, and density altitude. Optionally, you can add a salometer to get sky condition and cloud height. And you can also add a visibility and present weather sensor to get visibility and present weather information.
Interesting. So let me just kind of summarize again. So at tower-controlled airports, we have ATIS, right? ATIS, that's a broadcast once an hour or more frequently if the weather changes and the like. And so there a pilot tunes in a specific frequency for that airport and just listens. They don't have to key the mic, they don't have to talk with anybody, it's merely listening. So we get the current weather. And at an ATIS, you generally get the runway that's in use as well because it's a towered airport. So that's recorded by a live person, which takes time and effort. Other smaller airports have what we call an AWOS or an ASOS, and those are acronyms that stand for something to do with weather, and I can't remember all the acronym, but so that's a government system installed at a specific airport, non-towered airport. And then Say Weather is for yet other airports that don't have an AWOS or an ASOS, and obviously are not towered and the like. And so your product includes several sensors that remind me again what all you can sense and broadcast to the pilot?
It's typically the same thing you would find with an AWOS 3. And so again, it's winds, gusts, temperature, dew point, altimeter setting, density, altitude, and with the optional sensors, visibility, present weather, sky condition, and cloud height. So the thing that's the differentiator is the O in AWOS and ASOS is observation. Our system is advisory. So we are able to offer situational awareness, surface condition weather to airports that are on a budget, because our system is advisory, it's not observational. And primarily the difference between those two is calibration. Our systems, when we provide them with NIST traceable calibration. That's the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. And that federal government organization is the holder of the standards for everything from pressure to temperature, you name it. So when we ship our systems, we're traceable to those standards, and we process the weather station information using AWOS algorithms, the exact same algorithms that are used. So wind is a 2-minute average, et cetera, all of the things that you do to provide aviation quality weather.
Okay.
So it's advisory, but it's as close to an AWOS or an ASOS as you can get.
And probably less expensive for an airport to install rather than an AWOS, full-up AWOS system.
Exactly, because it's advisory, it doesn't really require all of the certification
Yet
requirements.
it's still very accurate. And
Yes.
it's produced in accordance with NIST standards,
Right.
national standards. So it's a good system and viable for us. So as pilots, from the info we get from, say, weather would be wind direction and speed. So from that I can choose the appropriate runway for me.
Right.
I will hear the altimeter setting, the barometric pressure, so I can tune my altimeter to make sure I'm accurate there. And then if the, say, weather system has the more advanced features, I would also get sky conditions and visibility?
Visibility and present weather, right?
Okay.
Correct.
So the package that you produce and send out to an airport to be installed is what, the size of a house or size of a box, or
So
how big is it?
it's about 20 inches by 20 inches, about 6 inches deep, and it uses about 3 watts of electrical energy.
Pole mounted or underground or what?
So there's two parts to our system. The weather station, of course, that's out at the airport, and then there's the data processing. That data processing is typically installed in an FBO, maybe in a hangar if it's a private airport. It's typically installed indoors somewhere, and it's not that big. It's fairly small.
Okay.
So there's a wireless link between the weather station and that unit, our Say Weather unit.
And the Say Weather unit is the one that broadcasts
Correct.
to the pilots.
Correct.
So a difference then, another obvious difference between AWOS and Say Weather is AWOS, the pilot would tune in the frequency and
Right.
listen. The Say Weather, we tune in a frequency.
To the Unicom,
the
whatever the
Unicom
Common Traffic Advisory
which would be on
frequencies.
anyway, wouldn't we?
Right,
And
exactly.
we key the mic 3 or 4 times,
3 or
depending
4
on,
times, depending on how it's programmed, to the preference of the airport.
and then we will immediately get the
You
weather
immediately get the weather.
broadcast.
That is correct.
All right, so it is nice in that there's just one frequency to deal with. You don't have to have one frequency for AWOS and ASOS,
Exactly.
and another for CTAF, but you can do it all on the CTAF frequency.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. The idea is to reduce distraction in the cockpit, make it easy to get that situational awareness.
And another feature that I think is, another option that makes it good sense is if I'm coming into that airport and someone else has already keyed the mic 3 or 4 times and get the weather, I get the weather as well.
Exactly.
So I don't have to tie up the frequency for another broadcast. I mean, I can
Exactly.
just,
Exactly.
All right, well, that's great. So, Larry, where are these products made, or where's your headquarters?
So we're located in Clearwater, Florida, not too far from here.
Right
Yeah,
near your home.
Yeah, it's a short drive over here. And we just recently moved into a new facility, so we've expanded. We're bringing on some additional staff. So we're excited about that, and we're producing quite a bit more than we did in the past.
That's great.
In our new facility.
How many
Yeah.
installations do you have in service now, roughly, or don't?
Roughly 130, and we have a representative in South America now, so we're selling there. We have a representative in Canada. We're exploring aggressively European applications, so it's starting to expand quite a bit.
Yeah, I can see, particularly in other countries, there would be a lot of great opportunity for this to be installed less expensive than AWOS or ASOS and the like. I think you told me when we were talking before they started the broadcast that there's a satellite linkage as well, and how does that work? And what does that do?
So there is a digital companion to Say Weather that we call SayWix Air, and essentially what that does is that enables pilots to retrieve the weather by text or by looking at a website or looking at an EFB like ForeFlight. We have options that you can install in Say Weather that will give you a link over cell phone to the internet or through satellite to the internet. The satellite link is in development right now. It's not offered as a product, and we're expecting that in a few months. But once that is done, you can have the systems remote to any sort of internet connectivity, hardwired internet connectivity, and get the data back through SAWIX Air to your phone, to a website, to an AFB, et cetera.
Interesting, interesting. So there's almost no limits to what we can do with this. I like
Right.
the idea of getting it through an EFB. I use that all the time now. I'm a ForeFlight user and a Garmin Pilot user, but they're great. And if you've got ADS-B, you can get weather for reporting stations. But now with smaller airports that would have, say, weather, that same information is available. Would it just show up on that airport?
Right. The
weather
airport
tab?
would show up, like for instance, you might not have an airport that has even shown up on ForeFlight before. And then all of a sudden now there'll be a designator, a pin there, and you can click on that, go to the weather tab, and get a current METAR. They're updated probably 6 times an hour, roughly.
Okay, so every 12 minutes or so.
Something like that, yeah.
Good, or I guess 10 minutes. So yeah, mental math and me just
No worries.
We're very good. So you mentioned small airports that don't have. You mentioned something about designating an identifier.
Sure.
So there's some airports that just don't have an identifier yet. Don't have the.
That's
four
true.
letters?
That's true. Well, we have recently heard the call of the backcountry folks, and there are a lot of places where people can fly airplanes, and there is no identification. There may be a name for it. You may call it Eagle's Nest or something like that, but it's not got an official ICAO identifier. So in order to tag that location to our weather data and to expose that to EFBs that want to use our weather data, we have created a very simple non-proprietary algorithm that produces a 6-character ID for any location on the planet given the lat-lon. So you have the latitude and longitude, you can put that into our algorithm, get the 6-character ID for that location, and that becomes now the tag for the weather that will be at that location. So the idea is that as we deploy backcountry, say, weather systems, we can put those IDs on there, and now people can access that data through EFBs and SAWIX Air.
Excellent. So if you've got a backcountry strip that you like, that doesn't yet have an identifier, you can purchase a Say Weather system and get your own identifier. If you got a ranch in West Texas that has a pasture that you can use as a landing strip, you too can have an identified place with weather there. And if you got a heliport near your home that you want to use and land your helicopter there, you can get Say Weather and have an identifier for that. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Are these expensive units? I mean, are we talking millions of dollars?
No. A typical AWAS, maybe depending on the installation, maybe 150 to 200, maybe 250,000. In Alaska, they can be up towards $1 million. Our systems start at 11,000. So you can put in a complete system. It usually costs $500 to $1,000 to pay for the hardware to install it, and they can typically be installed in about a half a day. So they're considerably less expensive than an AWAS.
Wow, 15 to 20,000 we're talking about.
Right.
More expensive as you get more complex.
Exactly. As you add the options and features,
Yeah, it's like getting buying a new car. Here's the base price of the car, and then all the things that you or your spouse wants. There's are add-ons. Well, that's understandable. Yeah,
yes.
But you get what you pay for. Right? Good. Is there a way to connect this with airport lighting?
Yes, there is. We actually have an airport lighting option. Since we were counting mic keys already for activating the weather, there is an option to put this on airport lighting. And we have a unique feature in Say Weather. We will actually broadcast back to you an acknowledgement of your mic keys. So I don't know if you fly at night very often, and if you're listening especially to the multicom frequencies, you'll hear people just clicking incessantly, right? And so our system will say, airport name, lights acknowledged, if you have lighting with our Say Weather system.
So oftentimes at non-towered airports, when we fly in at night, we will, and they have pilot control lighting, PCL, I think it's called in the Green Book. Clicking the mic 3 times turns the lights, airport lights, on low. Clicking the mic 5 times, medium intensity, and I think 7 times to get it to high intensity. By the way, I also learned the other day that if you get it to high intensity and you go, ooh, that is too bright, you can click it 5 times and it'll bring it back down to medium intensity, or click it 3 times and bring it down to low intensity. I learned something there too. But anyway, so Say Weather will then acknowledge 5 mic clicks back to me.
Sure,
and lights
it
on.
would say if it's programmed for 5 mic clicks to turn on the lights for that particular airport. Let's just say, for instance, you're in a scenario where you're above the clouds and you don't necessarily know exactly that the lights are on or off. If it's giving you an acknowledgement, you can rest assured that as you break out of the clouds, those lights are going to be on.
Good. And if I get Say Weather broadcast 10 miles out to get the weather, I could also know that the lights are on then.
Exactly.
Might be good to click it again as I get close, just to make sure the lights stay on. That's always my worry.
Yeah.
Well, I can see lots of places that Say Weather could be used. Are you deploying systems in Alaska?
Yes, Alaska actually has turned out to be quite an interesting location for Say Weather. It turns out through the previous 2 FAA authorization bills, there's wording that allows Part 135 operators a path to using advisory weather like Say Weather for IFR operations in Alaska. So we have a number of customers up there, most recently an oil company that's installed this. And we also have cases where Say Weather has been installed as a backup to airports that have an AWOS.
So Part 135 operators, if they're flying IFR to a location, they have to have weather reporting there to be able to land, to do an approach and land there.
Exactly.
So if it's a small airport somewhere in Alaska and they have charter operations there through Part 135, they need weather reporting. If they don't yet have or can't afford an AWOS or ASOS, then yours is an obvious option for them.
Right, absolutely.
At probably less cost, but one viable that allows them to continue Part 135 operations, and that's great. And then backup. So when would backup, Say Weather backup, be important?
Well, so if you had an AWOS at an airport that's in a very remote location, I'll give you an example. We have one in Atka, which is an island on the Aleutian chain. It's pretty much north of Hawaii, so it's out there quite a ways. And if that AWOS fails for some reason, you then need to get a technician out there to fix it. But as you know, in Alaska, IFR is prevalent most of the time. So you can't fly IFR to that airport because the AWOS is not functioning. So now it doesn't get repaired. So you have to wait for some VFR conditions, which could be months and months. It could be a very long time. And then once you're at that point where you have VFR conditions, it has to match with the availability of a technician and parts to get out there and fix it. So in that particular airport, we have Say Weather installed as a backup. And Part 135 operators can use that given the procedures. And by the way, those procedures, we work very closely with Flight Tech Engineering. That company is the company that sort of shepherds through the process to establish the procedures and get the approvals for the Part 135 operator. But once that's in place, that Part 135 operator can fly there using the Say Weather as a backup, can repair the AWOS, in a reasonable time, and then they're back up and running.
Good. Without that, they wouldn't be able to likely get a technician there.
Right.
And the AWOS or ASOS system would be down for, gosh, who knows? Who knows?
There are some that, I was at a recent conference there at the Alaska Air Carriers Association, and I heard a comment during one of the breaks that, they said, we're really proud of our AWOS. Its operational status is described by never, rarely, and sometimes.
So that isn't a very good record, huh?
That's right.
And how about your operational capability and sustainability? Has it been?
Yeah, we're pretty much online all the time. And the thing that's really great about Say Weather is the parts are very readily available, and it doesn't take a trained technician to change the sensor or to make sure something is working properly.
Good. How long have you been in business with Say Weather?
We started in 2015.
Okay.
And we actually produced, that's when the company was formed, and we produced our first system in 2016. and that was sold right here in Florida, in fact. So,
which was
been
the
a while.
first airport?
Apopka.
Apopka.
Apopka was our very first one.
Yeah, and I fly into Apopka not frequently, but every once in a while. And I remember clicking the mic 3 or 4 times and getting the weather. And I thought, well, that's kind of unique. I didn't realize I was using the Say Weather
There you
system.
go.
So
Yeah,
now I know.
there it is.
So 10-year anniversary this year or next year?
I think we'll call it in October of this year.
Okay,
So,
good. Beginning of a fiscal year, perhaps. So that's good. So Larry Langebrake, thank you so much for joining us today. Your product, Say Weather, providing weather at airports that wouldn't otherwise have an ASOS or an ASOS at a price that is much more reasonable and doable, and making for safety in flying. Thank you, Larry, for joining us. Thank you for developing your product
Absolutely,
and promoting
Ron.
it. And we're delighted to have you share in that how it provides safety for all aviators, and particularly in backups and unique locations. So for the Florida Aviation Network, I'm Ron Timmermans, one of the many hosts. We're broadcasting live and in the clear at the 51st Aerospace Expo and Fly-In at Lakeland, Florida. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned. There are more interviews to follow.